Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to this final edition of the DDCA T20 podcast with me, Brent Wilson, a producer at GameFace. And joining me once again, one of the finest young journalists from the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne is Mitch Bourke. Mitch, how have you been the last few weeks?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Thanks for having me on again. And yeah, just keen to get into it and recap some exciting action in the DDCA.
Well, by far the most exciting of all was Doveton pulling off a massive upset against Springvale South. How about that for a result?
Yeah, very good. Very impressive from Doveton and Springvale South. Their first loss of the season in any format. So yeah, huge effort from Doveton, the Turf 2 side. So yeah, interesting to see if they can push any further.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. So the game we're talking about at Alex Nelson Reserve in the quarterfinals, Springvale South posted 852 off their 20 overs, potentially under par. They were in a bit of trouble early at 5 of 65 off 9 overs, but then Cam Forsyth 46 off 35 and Yoshan Kamara recovered the innings with 48 off 31 to his name. Tormey with the ball was critical, 3 for 24 off 4. Bundy 2 for 28 off 4 and Coates 2 for 15 off 4. So as I said, a fairly under par target, and Doveton got off to a pretty good start with Simon Mackey posting 42 off 33, Dale Tormey 23 off 11, and a bit of a cameo at the top as well from Mitch Daly. They were sitting at 3 for 92 after 11 overs, but there's still a bit of work to do, as we know, with such a powerful bowling attack like Springvale South. And it was, in the end, Kane Bundy, the man who got it done. 35 off his 28 balls, including a 6 off the third last ball to win it. A bit Matt Renshaw-esque against the Stars a few weeks ago. So getting it done by 3 wickets were Doveton. How impressive was that?
Yeah, huge. Just massive effort from Doveton, really. Probably the biggest upset we've seen in the tournament today. You wouldn't really pick anyone to knock off Springvale South the way they've been playing. But yeah, you pretty much covered it off well. It could have been a lot worse for Springvale South because they were, what you said, 5 for 65, and then they were 6 for 85 as well. Then that late order kick from Cam Forsyth and Yoshan Kamara got them up to 151, but still not enough against the Doves. And Simon Mackey, how about his form, eh?
Yeah, unbelievable. And yeah, lots of runs in all 3 games he's played so far. As two with Dale Tormey, those two have been absolutely dynamic for the Doves. I guess the main point I want to bring up about Simon Mackey is that he didn't panic. At one stage, he was 2 for 12, 2 off 12, I should say. Going at a strike rate, obviously very, very low, 16 strike rate. And then he scored 33 off his last 12. So just showing that I guess you don't have to panic early. You can build into your innings, and once you get going, you can start hitting sixes all over the boundary.
Yeah, 100%. And probably a real good example for other players in the competition to look at. But it also does make it easier when he can kind of back himself in to go at that explosive rate. What's that, nearly 300 strike rate off his last 12 balls? Like, not many players are doing that. But yeah, just great effort from him and Doveton.
Yeah.
Congratulations to them.
Well, we say that Doveton didn't panic. Well, Springvale South did. They had a chance to run out Kane Bundy twice when he was on 15. One of them was quite an easy chance. Should have been a throw straight to the keeper who would have whipped the bails off and got it out. And the other one was a bit tougher, a bit of a shy at the stumps at the non-striker's end. But nonetheless, Doveton showing Springvale South how to play, I guess, even though Springvale South are the much more touted opponent. I guess another thing I want to pick up on is that in the batting innings for Springvale South, they were able to pounce on everything short, but they were actually quite well tied down by Doveton whenever they bowled good line and length. And all of the first 4 or 5 wickets all fell to balls that were just at a good length, which they just couldn't get away. I wonder whether the pitch might have kept low and might have been a factor. Mitch, you play on turf. What would be a factor in maybe that happening?
Yeah, well, definitely it can keep low, especially in DDCA. You tend to see a lot of the softer wickets not as well curated as in like Premier Cricket or subbies, these other leagues. So yeah, definitely something to consider there.
Yeah, well, there you go. Doveton getting it done against Springvale South in that first match. In the second quarter final, we're going to look at Buckley Ridges. Well, I mean, yeah, we've seen it 3 times now. Buckley posting 4 for 310 off their 20 overs. Watson 41, Udawate 102, Joe Rutner 86, and Michael Davies 55. The bowling figures for Parkfield were not pretty, and yeah, the best economy rate was actually 8 for a guy called D'Souza who only bowled 2 overs and took a wicket, but that was all they allowed him to do because everyone else was getting absolutely smacked around. And then in response, Parkfield put up a good fight. 696 was their final total off their 20 overs in response. Goodyear scored 55, D'Souza again 50, and then Hussein Ali 2 for 34 off 4, and Goodright 2 for 32 off 3 with the pick of the bowlers for Buckley Ridges, getting it done by 114 runs. Mitch, not much to take away from this apart from Park Oval's pretty small.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I was going to say, I feel like 310 in 20 overs, like, if you really think about that and let it sink in, we should be in absolute shock. Like, what have we witnessed? But we saw 365 from Narry South a few weeks ago. So, honestly, I feel like I've been numb to these 300 plus T20 scores at Park Oval. And, like, we're not seeing them anywhere else. So, it's more the ground than the teams, unfortunately. But at the same time, Buckley Ridge is one of the most destructive teams. We haven't seen them play on a bigger ground yet this tournament. So I don't know what they're capable of in those circumstances. But yeah, Mahalo Udawada, the former Sri Lanka international, he had 10 sixes. Same with, you have to forgive him the pronunciation here, but Hadigalaj Jayaratna. And he seems to be in form. He's knocked a couple of turf 1 half centuries to his name this year. But yeah, Parkfield, they really had no answers. Tried 8 different bowlers, so just about threw the ball to everyone. And never going to chase 310 really, but good crack to make 190. But yeah, no real surprises from that one.
Yeah, well, you mentioned about the smaller grounds that Buckley Ridge has been playing on. Well, they get another chance to play on a small one in the semi-final against Doveton, so they're pretty lucky there. They'll be playing at Wilson Oval, while the other semi-final will be played at Shepley Oval, so we should be seeing a lot of big scores there. Mitch, Parkfield probably didn't do a whole lot wrong, but I guess they didn't really overcome much in the first round. They were always expected to win that, and then, yeah, batting first seems to be the trick at Park Oval. You put on a big score and the pressure's just too much.
Yeah, really solid effort from Parkfield, honestly. They just a decent, like, I guess, middle of the road, I guess. They didn't really overachieve in the round robin stage to get here because they are a bottom of the table Turf 2 team, but they only beat Turf 3 sides. They only beat what's in front of you to still make quarterfinals. And then obviously no one expects them to beat Buckley. So just a really on par performance from Parkfield, I'd say, throughout the tournament.
I still do wonder what happens if the other team that's not Buckley Ridge is batted first, because we saw in the group stages
Mm.
Buckley bat first post 239 and 249, which were too much for both Kimura and Narry South. So decent opposition there as well, especially Narry South. And then, yeah, they post 310, their biggest score against Parkfield. I don't know if Parkfield will be disappointed in that effort given that Narry South went for less, but I guess they're a Turf 2 team. That's bound to happen. So, Mitch, who do you think will win the semi-final between Doveton and Buckley Ridges?
Yeah, it's a really tough one to pick, honestly. On paper, you just say Buckley Ridges, they've simply been destructive. But Doveton are red hot. We wouldn't have seen them beat Springy South. So who's to say they can't? They've got form on their side, momentum. Who's to say they can't go and knock off Buckley? And, I love an underdog story. I've tried to back the underdogs in, like, to mimic that St. Bridget St. Louis tale of 2018, this whole tournament. First, I was on Dandy West. They let me down. Then I was on Beaky. They let me down. But it turns out I should have been on Doveton the whole time. But anyway, as much as my heart says Doveton, I think my head says Buckley are just too good. You look through their batting lineup, Mahela Udawada, Ben Wright, DJ Watson. I feel like there's someone else in there I'm forgetting that's destructive. You had, sorry, what was his name? Give me a second. You had Jay Ratner that also hit 10 sixes last game. So there's just firepower everywhere. And like, you've got like former first class players, former internationals. And I feel like Buckley, it could be a little bit of Park Oval, like rosing it up a bit, rose colored glasses, making it seem a bit better. But Buckley just really suited to the T20 game. So yeah, I think I've written off Doveton every stage of the tournament if you look back. So I hope I'm wrong again. But I'm going to write them off again and think Buckley will go through.
Yeah, well, I guess you were saying Springvale South, that's their first loss of the season. So if anyone can beat Buckley Ridges based on that alone, I reckon it would be Doveton. All right, the second semi-final will be played between, first off, Berwick, who played their quarterfinal against Springvale. Springvale only posted 828 off their 20. They were 2 for 87 at one stage, so they got off to a pretty good start with Badzoka 62 and Mendes 27. I was just looking through the scorecard yesterday, and I sort of discovered that there was a 31 run partnership between Sohal and Badzoka for the second wicket. Badzoka scoring all but one of it, so he must have go on a bit in that over. But other than that, it was not a pretty side after that. They lost 6 for 29 after that stage, or 2 for 87. Harkenwell Singh 2 for 20 off 4, Perrin 2 for 22 off 4, and Wills 2 for 33 off 4. Berwick getting it done very easily in the end, chasing it down, none down off 17.2 overs. Matt Chasemore, 67, not out. And Geordie Cleland, 59, not out. So, Mitch, a pretty comprehensive performance from Berwick.
Yeah, 100%. First, I just want to start off with a little congratulations to Springvale, who are sitting 5th in Turf 3. It's a great effort from them to get to the quarterfinals. But yeah, just not good enough for Berwick, who are struggling in the 2-day comp. but they're still picking up the wins, albeit against easier opponents in the T20s. Just seemed like a really consistent bowling performance. They had a few twofers spread across their bowling attack with some runouts in there as well. You keep it side for 128 in the T20, you'd take that more often than not. So that was pretty solid from Berwick. And then, yeah, Cheeks and Chase Moore and Geordie Cleland just dominant with the bat. 129 run undefeated stand to chase that total down. I'm not sure if it's papering over a few cracks because, as I touched on, they are struggling in Turf 1 Berwick, sitting 7th at the moment, which is just very uncharacteristic and something you've never seen from them in years gone by, like recently. So, yeah, I'm not sure because it's interesting. Berwick, that opening partnership, Geordie Cleland and Matt Chasemore is the dominant one. It's worked for them in the past. It took them to the T20 crown. It took them to the Cricket Victoria Regional Big Bash crown. But they've tinkered with some different things, tried Lockie Brown up there and some other players. But yeah, interesting to see when the times are getting like serious in the finals now, they've gone back to that Cheeks and Cleland combination, which is obviously going to work really well. And if no one can get them out, they'll just keep going and winning games for Berwick. But yeah, honestly, like result you'd expect from Berwick in the end. But yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned before about Springvale that they did pretty well to get to this stage. How have you summarised their performances in the first few rounds of this T20 comp?
Yeah, so I think it was a great effort from them to reach the quarterfinals. Obviously, as I said, they're sitting 5th in Turf 3. So they beat Keysborough, who are a Turf 2 team, albeit they're sitting at the bottom of the table, but still down them by 16 runs. Then they're also able to knock off Dandenong West, who had the likes of Nuwan Kulasekara and Malinga Bandara, 2 Sri Lankan internationals, and Kulasekara was once the world's #1 ODI bowler. So to knock off that kind of team with players of that caliber, huge effort from a like middle table Turf 3 team. So yeah, a few notable performers they had. Pasindu Madishan knocked 65 against Keysborough. Nuwan Mendes had 58 and 3 for 37 versus Danny West, and also 3 for 31 against Keysborough. Now, another player I want to touch on here, the Lanka Danasakara Mudiyansalaj. He had 2 for 7 off 3 against Danny West. His 2 wickets, if you don't mind. Kulasekara and Bandara, both the former Sri Lankan internationals. So huge bowling effort from him in that game. And yeah, as you touched on in the quarterfinal, Radamar Badzoka, love that name, by the way, scored 62 of their 128, so almost half those runs there. But yeah, I'm going to throw in a little rating here. I didn't do it for the other two, but now I'm just going to jump on the rating. I'm going to give them a 7, Springvale. Really solid effort to beat 2 higher teams and Danny West, especially those internationals. But yeah, they'd be disappointed, not so much to lose to Berwick, because that's expected, I guess, as harsh as it is, but they're probably disappointed to lose in the comprehensive fashion they did not take a wicket. But overall, really good effort to make the quarterfinals. I'd give them a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and I guess the most promising thing, as you mentioned there, was they weren't relying on one guy every time. I guess that's probably was somewhat, or has been somewhat, of a downfall for someone like Dandenong West, who rely on 2 blokes. But these guys, Mendes, Badzoka, Madishan, Money and Salaj, there's lots of players there who stood up at different points in time and, got them through much further than we expected, I guess. And so that's Berwick through to their semi-final. They'll take on North Dandenong, who batted first in their quarterfinal versus Beaconsfield. They were in a bit of strife early at 450 after 6, but it was a magnificent performance at the back end by Sultani, 56 off 33, and McCartney, 48 off 38, finishing both not out on a score of 5 for 169 off their 20. The spinners were best for Beaconsfield and most economical. Mitch Teelan, 2 for 32 off 4. I want to mention Mark Cooper as well, another 21 off 4, because comparatively the pace went all at economies above 9. And, well, that was probably way too much on a big ground like Beaconsfield. They only made 825 in response. Jesse Pasaka was the one who threatened to take the game away from North Dandenong most, but he was dismissed for 20 off 21, hitting it straight back to the bowler. And I guess you want to compare that to someone like Tyler Clark, who was 24 off 31. It wasn't exactly easy going for Beaconsfield. Gupta, 3 for 12 off his 4 overs opening up, and Ahmed Khan, I should say, 2 for 19 off 4. North Dandenong, again, another probably comprehensive performance from them.
Yeah, as we touched on before, like last episode, North Dandenong weren't overly convincing in the group stage. They ended up qualifying 8th. So still qualified, but just scraped into the quarterfinals. But yeah, knocked off the highest ranked team in Beaconsfield. So a huge effort from them. And I feel like something we saw with Beaky in the round robin games, they really like to start strong. And in both those games, I had an opener score at least 50. So getting Mark Cooper, who had a 70 to his name for Golden Duck, was obviously a big dint to Beaky. And when they got Tyler Clark for, 20 or 30 odd, something around that mark. really
Clean
just
ball.
put them back, and it probably wasn't something Beaky had prepared for. So yeah, and I feel like Beaky's run chase was also hurt by the fact they couldn't really build sustained partnerships, and when they lost one batsman, they lost both. So then you have to go through that whole resetting process of two new batsmen at the crease. They've got to establish themselves, and it happened about 3 times. You look through their scorecard; they had collapses of 2 for 9, 2 for 2, and 2 for 3 every 20 or 30 runs. And in at least two of those, I know it was both set batsmen getting out. So that's probably what was the big killer for Berkey. I mean, Beaky. But yeah, and as you also touched on there, Shashank Gupta, his 3 for. Interesting. That was North Dandenong's first 3 wicket haul across the whole competition. So they've just been tidy. Everyone chipping in. No one really standing up. But yeah, Gupta's bowled well across the tournament. He's got a wicket in every game. But yeah.
Now, I mentioned McCartney and Sultani were brilliant at the back end of their batting innings. There was a pretty strange moment for McCartney, who was at the time 20 or 20, just trying to steady the ship after the loss of those 4 early wickets, where the ball seemed to hit the stumps, and the stump went backwards and everything like that. But both umpires actually agreed that it wasn't out for some reason. The keeper was arguing that, well, if it was the stump was knocked back and it wasn't in fact the ball hitting the stumps, then it should have been called a no ball for the keeper putting his gloves in front of the stumps. It was this very strange moment, which probably did a big dint in Beaconsfield's hopes there, because they could have had them 6 for not many, and it would have been potentially over. But by the same token, North Dandenong added an extra batsman in between the group stages and this match, so they had more batting to come. A guy who scored 26 off 15 at the end of one of the other innings in the group stages. He was next to come in, and then they had the bowlers who were boosted up, put down the order by 1 spot because of that added batting. So they certainly still had something left. So I don't know if it would have affected the course of the match too much, especially when Sultani was the one who was going off his head there. North Dane were just too powerful. The boundaries were pretty large there at Perk Ellison Reserve, but North Dandenong too powerful, Sultani too powerful. Beaconsfield couldn't have done really much more. So that's that second fourth quarterfinal done. Second semi-final will be between Berwick and North Dandenong. Mitch, who do you think has got that one?
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game, Berwick versus North Dandenong, because it's Berwick's first real test of the tournament, I suppose, coming up against a fellow Turf 1 team, and probably for the first time in a while, North Dandenong being ranked higher than Berwick in Turf 1. So it's really interesting. Looking at that Springvale performance, you'd think Berwick are red hot, cracking, but I don't know, like I touched on, I feel like a few cracks been papered over. To see what team they go with. If it's the same team they played in the quarterfinal, they do fall away a bit after number 5 in the batting order, maybe even 6. So not as much depth as they'd like, probably, but really interesting to see. And you look, last time they met in Turf 1, Rajitha Rananwira and Javed Khan both struck half centuries for North Dandenong, and Berwick could only manage 2 wickets defending 171. So Sushant Gupta, who we touched on earlier, he's in great T20 form too, with 3 for 29 off 12 he's in great T20 form. Yeah, I'm just getting really muddled up here.
Yeah.
Sushant Gupta is in great T20 form, and he also had 3 for 29 off 12 last time he played Berwick. So yeah, but honestly, Berwick, they can only beat who's in front of them, but I feel like it's really going to hurt them that they haven't had proper tests yet. Like North Dandy, they had to beat Beaky, who's the highest ranked team. They're really hitting their straps, whereas Berwick, I feel like they've just been coasting through, haven't been tested. And when we are seeing them tested on Saturdays, they're not standing up to it. So honestly, I think North Dandenong are going to get this one done. They won pretty convincingly when they met earlier this year. So I back North Dandenong in.
Yeah. There you go. So North Dandenong in the second semi. I should go back to Beaconsfield before we continue any further. They got through the group stages against 2 Turf 1 teams, so a pretty impressive performance from them overall.
Yes, they had the toughest fixture of anyone probably, because you look, some teams have only had to down Turf 3 sides or Turf 2 sides, like someone as a Berwick, whereas Beaky, they had to do it the hard way, had Hallam and St Mary's, 2 Turf 1 teams, beat Hallam by 4 wickets, which was a really big upset there, because Hallam are flying high in Turf 1, won the premiership not long ago, and St Mary's is probably the more shocking one, because they are struggling a bit in Turf 1. I mean, I think they're 6th at the moment, but Beaconsfield beat them so comprehensively, rolled them for 55 to win by 109 runs. And the wickets are really spread in that game. There was maybe a 3 for, but no real 5 for or demolition from any specific bowler. So really impressive. Couple of individual performances across Beaky's campaign. Mark Cooper had 70 against St Mary's. Tyler Clark had 59 against Hallam. And Jack Birchall also had 4 for 21 against Hallam. If I had to give them a rating, I'd say 8.5. Just making out of their group was a super effort. And as a Turf 2 team, to beat 2 Turf 1 teams, you give them a tick based off that alone. Obviously frustrating not to take it further when they did qualify first. But at the end of the day, still a great effort. And hopefully we see them in Turf 1 next year. And the way they're going, we should.
Yeah, that'll be good to see. So semi-finals, just to round out the semi-finals, we've got Doveton taking on Buckley Ridge in the first one. That's at Wilson Oval, beside Shepley Oval and beside Park Oval. So the boundaries there are quite small all round. So that would be interesting to see. Might be seeing a few more big scores there, especially if Buckley Ridges get to bat first. And then the second semi-final, Berwick versus North Dandenong. Who do you think we'll be seeing in the grand final out of those two matches?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a Buckley versus North Dandenong grand final, which should be a really good one. 2 Turf 1 teams and a really interesting match.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the DDCA T20 comp all rounded up, I guess. Yeah, we've had the group stages, quarterfinals, and now semi-finals and grand final all on the same day in and around Dandenong Park. Shepley Oval will host the grand final. So, Berwick North Dandenong is your tip. Yeah, who you got for the win?
Yeah, so if we go through it, for what it's worth, Buckley and North Dandenong, they met just 10 days ago in Turf 1. So if we do see that matchup, we've got a pretty good form guide. And in that encounter, Buckley prevailed by 90 runs. Nimesh Kariwasam took 5 in that game, though, for North Dandenong. And an interesting point here, he dismissed the entire top 4, got Mahela Udawada for 3 and Ben Wright for 1. And if we're going to beat Buckley in a T20, as we see, they've just got firepower littered across their top order. So if the key to beating them is going to be get those early wickets, if you can restrict a couple of those big hitters to low scores, it just takes away a lot of Buckley's strength. And that's probably their biggest strength is their run scoring. So if Kariwasam can repeat that effort, I think North Dandenong could be in with a chance. But still, I'm not going to discount Buckley Ridges. There's just too many options. And even like you get Udawada and Ben Wright, Buckley is still putting on 200. They've still got DJ Watson. They've still got these other names. So Buckley, that's going to be too hard to beat. And in that T20 format, we'll be interested to see how they go on a bigger ground because Shepley Oval obviously bigger than Wilson and Park Oval, where we've seen Buckley tested. But I still think regardless, they're not dumb cricketers. You've got international experience. You've got county experience. They know how to play the size of the ground. They'll adjust their game accordingly. And we'll see Buckley get the job done and lift the T20 crown.
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a blessing for them so far. Could it be a curse? Well, we'll wait and see on this Sunday. So that's, the DDCA T20 competition rounded up. Also happening on this 5th, we'll go through a few of the other leagues that are happening. We've got the Casey Cardinia Cricket Association grand finals for the T20s. There's one for the top division, the Premier Division, and one for the District Division. As of the time recording, we don't know who's going to be in the District Division grand final, but in the Premier Division, it's Kooyurup versus Cardinia, 2 of the powerhouses of that competition there, and we should see a pretty good game in that one, and that will be on at Tumark Reserve in Pakenham. So a good day for Casey Cardinia Cricket Association there, and I'll be there as part of GameFace doing some coverage of that match. So make sure you tune into that as well if you can while watching the DSCA. And then finally, Mitch, as the time of recording, you just have played a T20 quarterfinal. I think it was quarterfinal against who was it? St Bernard's over in the West as part of Endeavour Hills in the VSDCA. How'd you go?
Yeah, it was good. We got the job done. Surprisingly, knocked over St Bernard's. We're into the semi-finals. So pretty effort. We had a really good start. Then they got away a bit. Then I think we're chasing 148. We fell to 3 for 6. Then a massive partnership from Akshay Bilal especially and our marquee player Satish saw us get over the line pretty comfortably, only 4 down in the end. But yeah, we're in real strife at one point. So yeah, we're in the semi-finals. Got to travel to Preston next week for the semi-finals. The travel doesn't stop. But yeah, exciting. Hopefully we go all the way.
Yeah, there you go. That's very exciting for, I guess, the southeast, out of our southeastern suburbs of Melbourne there. We obviously had the Premier Cricket Grand Finals, so the T20s, they wrapped up with Melbourne and who was the other one? I can't remember who the other one was, but that match has already been played on Australia Day. So Case of South Melbourne made the semi-finals of that competition, but they fell down. So a lot of T20 action happening, and it's, well, just about to round out, I guess, with, as I said, the DDCA T20 semi-finals and final coming up this weekend, and also the Casey Cardinia Cricket Association grand finals, and you've got your semi-finals for Endeavour Hills as well. So exciting for the local southeastern area. Any other final observations you want to make, Mitch?
I want to put you on the spot quickly with the DDCA Grand Final. Who do you reckon you've got? Who do you think's in the Grand Final, and who do you think's winning it?
Jeez, well, Springvale South obviously they feel like they're pretty hard to go past. So of course they had a loss in this T20 comp, but that's yeah, as you mentioned, the first loss they've had in any competition this summer. So it'd be pretty hard to go past them. I mean, North Dandenong's in the conversation for the first time in what feels like absolute ages, which is great to see. But I don't think they've got the long game in, and I think they're a bit too explosive and they're sort of not great at keeping their heads. So I think we can sort of rule them out of it. And then it's Buckley Ridges and Hallam. Geez, it seems like it'd be hard to go past Buckley again, to be honest. I mean, Hallam have done a pretty serviceable job, but they haven't exactly um, blown anyone away. But that's not really their style. They sort of just work hard and they get it done sort of that way. Obviously, Buckley Ridges have all the star power. Springvale South seem to have a lot of local cricket star power, and Hallam don't quite have that. So they certainly could surprise all of us. But I think we'll have to see Springvale South versus Buckley Ridges again.
Hmm, lovely.
What do you think?
I'd probably have to agree with you there. I reckon Springer South will go back to back.
Yeah, well, it should be an interesting finish to the DDCA 1 day or 2 day, whichever way you want to put it. Well, it's 1 day actually, isn't it? Competition there. Obviously, a month and a bit left with all the finals as well. And I just mentioned T20 is just about to round up. So exciting times for cricket in this region. Mitch, thank you for joining me once again. And yeah, we'll see how everything pans out over the next few weeks.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, hopefully plenty more entertaining cricket to come.